South Africa is a country of great diversity. In fact, it has 11 different official languages. This diversity has not always been honored by the leaders of the country. For more than 50 years, white South Africans had strict government rules called apartheid. Apartheid, which means apartness in the Afrikaans language, separated all the different groups of people. Many black South Africans were forced to live in homelands or rural areas that the government declared were not part of the South Africa. Others lived in townships, poor, crowded areas outside of cities. Only whites were permitted to live in cities. Apartheid also let whites lead South Africa, even though there were many more black people than white people in the country. Asians and people of mixed heritages also had to follow apartheid's strict rules. This here is a picture of what those homesteads and townships looked like, and some still live there in Cape Town. This picture is in, and these are what these buildings and houses looked like during apartheid. Many South Africans fought against apartheid by speaking out and organizing protests and rallies. One leader of the struggle was a lawyer named Nelson Mandela. Because of his work against apartheid, he was arrested in 1962 and the next year was sentenced to life in prison. By the 1980s, countries around the world were responding to the unfairness of apartheid, and they began to pressure South Africa to end it. South African athletes were not allowed to take part in international sports competitions. The United States and many other countries stopped doing as much business with South Africa because they did not want to support the apartheid government. Under pressure from inside and outside of South Africa, laws began to change. Finally, in 1991, apartheid was ended. Nelson Mandela was released from prison. On April 27, 1994, South Africa held its first free elections, in which every South African was allowed to vote. For blacks, this meant the beginning of a government in which they could participate. The voting was scheduled to last 3 days. South Africans of all races waited in long lines at the polls to vote. Because so many people wanted to cast a ballot, the country had to add a 4th day to the election. Nelson Mandela was elected the first black president of South Africa. He promised South Africans that all citizens would be treated equally. Under South Africa's new constitution, signed on December 10, 1996, all citizens have equal rights. The Constitution pledges fair housing, health care, and schooling for all South Africans. The people and government of South Africa are working hard to make the Constitution a reality. Still, change has been slow to come in many areas of South African life. Many black South Africans still live in poverty. In the areas once set up as townships, many black South Africans still crowd together in houses made of scrap metal and cardboard. Most township residents do not have electricity or running water. In the rural areas, living conditions are similar. Part of the problem is that there are not enough jobs. After apartheid ended, many people from other African countries came to South Africa looking for work. This means even more people began crowding South African cities like Johannesburg and Cape Town. One way South Africa hopes to create more jobs is by attracting businesses from other countries to open branches in South Africa. More countries want to do business with South Africa, and its economy is improving. For example, since the end of apartheid, businesses all over the world have opened branches that are new in South Africa, providing hundreds of new jobs. South Africa is also expanding its own businesses, such as the tourism industry. Its resorts and wildlife parks attract visitors from around the world. Education for Black South Africans may be the most improved area of life. Before apartheid, Black South Africans were not allowed to attend schools with white South Africans. The schools for Black South Africans had fewer books and supplies, fewer teachers, and were often very crowded. Today, all South African children can go to school together, some in the better equipped schools that were formerly for just white citizens. In today's South Africa, blacks and whites are working together to strengthen the country's economy, government, and schools. There are still many challenges to be met. Many black South Africans do not have good housing and there are not enough jobs. But education has improved and other changes to improve the lives of all South Africans are underway. Now what you will do at the end of this is you're going to go to the quiz section, the Google Forms of this assignment. As soon as you are ready, you're going to list 4 ways that life has changed for Black South Africans. You need to make sure that you use this article here, and you can use the article that I've screenshotted for you that we had for our take-home packets. And I also included a video about Nelson Mandela, the first black president of South Africa. Really interesting video. Interestingly enough, this is something that I remember very clearly. I graduated from high school in 1990, and I remember protests and all kinds of things in the news that talked about South Africa and how excited the world was once this system of government was abolished. So this is really interesting. So again, when you are done, make sure that you are going to the other part of the assignment and filling out the quiz. You're only going to get one shot, so make sure that you have 4 ways that life changed for Black South Africans after the end of apartheid. Type that in and make sure you click submit at the very bottom.